Velthara stepped off the transport ship and immediately knew something was different about this base. The air tasted wrong. Not contaminated, just filled with something the Luminari observer could not identify. Smoke, perhaps. Spices. And underneath it all, a strange metallic scent that made the translator implant work overtime to classify it as sweat and adrenaline. The human forward operating base on Viridian 7 looked nothing like the pristine coalition facilities Velthara had observed before. Sandbags formed walls around prefabricated structures. Scorch marks decorated the landing pad. Everywhere, humans moved with purpose, carrying weapons that seemed far too large for their frames. A human approached, shorter than Velthara by half a meter but moving with confident strides. Observer Velthara? I'm Corporal Taman. Welcome to Firebase Granite. Ended formant. Velthara performed the traditional Luminari greeting, a complex gesture with 3 arms. Taman simply extended one hand. They shook, and Velthara noted the calluses, the strength in that grip, the way Taman's eyes never stopped scanning the perimeter, even while greeting a guest. Your journey was smooth? Taman asked, leading Velthara toward the main building. Yes. Though I noticed most other coalition species have evacuated this sector. They have. Taman's tone remained neutral, but something flickered across his face. The tactical reports suggest the Vrykes are mobilizing in unprecedented numbers. Surely evacuation protocols. We don't evacuate, Taman interrupted politely. We're humans. Velthara did not understand the logic of that statement, but filed it away for later analysis. Inside the command center, 3 other humans worked at stations. Taman gestured to each in turn. Sergeant Jiwon, our combat specialist. Private Daehyun, on heavy weapons. Private Nari, medic and scout. Jiwon looked up from cleaning a rifle. She was smaller than Taman, with dark hair tied back severely. Her hands moved over the weapon with the kind of familiarity Velthara associated with artists and their tools. Observer, hope you brought good boots. It gets messy here. Daehyun, a massive human by their standards, grunted something that might have been a greeting. He was arranging ammunition boxes with surprising gentleness, each one labeled in human script. Nari smiled warmly. Don't mind them. They get grumpy before a fight. Want some coffee? I do not require stimulants, Velthara replied. Suit yourself. Nari poured herself a cup of black liquid that smelled like burned vegetation. She drank it without flinching. Velthara settled into the observation corner, activating recording equipment. This was standard procedure. Luminari observers documented coalition military operations to ensure adherence to ethical combat standards. Velthara had done this 17 times before. The humans went about their routines. Taman studied maps, marking positions with a red pen. Jiwon dismantled and reassembled her rifle twice more. Daehyun performed equipment checks with methodical precision. Nari organized medical supplies while humming something melodic. They talked among themselves in their Earth language, occasionally switching to coalition standard for Velthara's benefit. They discussed food, families, something called movies. Taman told a joke that made the others laugh. They seemed so normal, so unremarkable. Then the alarm sounded. The transformation was instant. The relaxed atmosphere vanished, like someone had flipped a switch. Every human stood, grabbed weapons, moved to positions. No panic, no shouting, just smooth, practiced motion. Vrik scouts, 3 kilometers out, Jiwon announced, reading displays. Estimate 40 units. Just scouts. Daehyun rumbled. They're checking our strength. Taman nodded, already strapping on armor. Standard defensive positions. Nari, take the observer to Bunker 3. Velthara, you'll be safe there but maintain visual access for your records. I must observe actual combat. You will, Taman said. His voice had changed, still calm, but now carrying an edge that made Velthara's skin prickle. From a position where you won't die in the first 5 minutes, Nari guided Velthara through corridors to a reinforced observation bunker. Through armored windows, the entire firebase was visible. Nari handed Velthara protective earpieces. "It gets loud," she explained. "Try not to let it overwhelm your senses. I have observed combat before." Nari's expression was strange. Sympathetic, maybe. Not like this. "You haven't." She left, taking position at a firing point with practiced ease. Velthara watched through the window as the humans settled into defensive positions. They had transformed their casual base into a fortress in minutes. Every angle covered, every approach measured. The Vreeks appeared on sensors first. Then, visually. Chitinous creatures, each the size of a human but faster, equipped with biological weapons that could tear through standard armor. 40 of them advanced toward the firebase in a loose formation. Coalition doctrine called for warning shots, attempts at communication, measured escalation. Velthara waited for Taman to follow protocol. Instead, Taman's voice came over speakers, calm as if ordering lunch. Fire. The world exploded. Velthara had never heard anything like it. The combined fire of human weapons created a sound that bypassed the ear protection and resonated in the bones. Explosions bloomed across the approach vector. The Vrick scouts didn't die cleanly. They were obliterated, torn apart by overlapping fields of fire that left nothing but scorched earth. It lasted 8 seconds, then silence. Velthara stared at the empty killing field. 40 Vrike scouts had been erased from existence in less time than it took to recite a peace prayer. Jiwan's voice crackled over the communication system, almost bored. "Clear. No survivors. Reset positions," Taman ordered. "They'll be back." That was them testing us. The humans reloaded weapons, checked equipment, returned to waiting. As if nothing significant had occurred. Velthara's 3 hands trembled slightly. The Luminari had words for what had just been witnessed. Efficiency. Brutality. Overwhelming force, applied without hesitation or mercy. But watching Taman sip water while standing over the field he had just turned into a graveyard, Velthara realized the humans had a different word for it. Standard procedure. Nari returned to the bunker, checking on Velthara. "You okay?" "I know it's intense the first time. Those were living beings. They were enemies who came to kill us." Nari's voice was gentle but firm. "We gave them the same chance they'd give us. None. But coalition protocols don't really work when the enemy regenerates from wounds and eats captives alive," Nari interrupted. "We learned that the hard way. Now we don't give them the chance." She smiled, and it was genuine warmth. "Don't worry. You're safe with us. We're very good at keeping people alive." Velthara looked out at the scorched earth again. "I am beginning to understand that." Through the window, Ji-won could be seen calmly eating something from a wrapped package while maintaining her watch. Dae-hyun had already returned to organizing ammunition. Taman marked something on his map. They had just killed 40 beings and returned to routine as if nothing had happened. Velthara activated the recording equipment with shaking hands. The Luminari Council would need to see this. Would need to understand what their human allies were truly capable of. As night fell over Firebase Granite, Velthara heard Ji-won say something to Taman in their Earth language. Taman laughed quietly. The translator caught fragments. Something about a storm coming. Something about teaching lessons. Velthara did not sleep that night. The humans rotated watch in shifts. Always alert. Always ready. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the firebase, sensors showed the Vricks gathering. Not 40 this time. Thousands. The sun set over Viridian 7 inches, shades of purple and gold. Velthara found no beauty in it. The darkness brought the Vricks, and the sensors showed them coming like a living tide. 3,400 and counting, Ji-won reported, her voice steady. Multiple approach vectors. They're not being subtle this time. Taman studied the tactical display. His expression remained calm, but Velthara noticed his jaw tightening. They want to overwhelm us with numbers. Standard Vryax doctrine. They think 20 to 1 odds means an easy victory. Should we not request reinforcement? Velthara asked from the observation position. Coalition fleet. Could arrive in 48 hours, Taman finished. We need to hold until then. He activated communications. All positions, weapons free. Standard defensive pattern Omega. Make every shot count. Velthara had reviewed human military doctrine during the journey. Pattern Omega was not standard. It was what humans called a meat grinder, a defensive formation designed not to hold ground, but to make that ground so costly the enemy broke before the defenders did. The first wave hit the outer perimeter as darkness completed its fall. The Vrix came screaming. That was the only word for it. A sound that bypassed rational thought and triggered something primal. They charged across open ground in a chittering swarm, claws extended, biological weapons dripping venom. The humans opened fire. This time, Velthara was not surprised by the sound. The sheer volume of destruction still made sense organs ring inside the protective bunker. But now Velthara could observe the technique behind the chaos. The humans did not fire randomly. Every weapon had a designated field. Overlapping zones of death, where nothing could survive. Daehyun's heavy weapon carved paths through the Vrix ranks, explosive rounds literally shredding bodies. G1 fired with mechanical precision. 3-round bursts, each one dropping a target. The Vrix kept coming. For every 10 that fell, 20 more appeared. They reached the outer barriers, began climbing, some making it through gaps. Outer wall breached. Sector 3. Someone reported. Collapse to second line, Taman ordered. Activate barriers. The humans retreated in perfect coordination. As they fell back, hidden charges detonated. The outer perimeter, now crawling with Vrix, vanished in sequential explosions. The blast wave rattled the bunker. Barrier activated. Daehyun confirmed. A shimmering energy field now protected the inner base. Coalition technology. Designed to withstand sustained assault. The Vrix crashed against it, claws scrabbling at energy they could not penetrate. Velthara relaxed slightly. The barrier would hold. Standard doctrine now called for maintaining the barrier until reinforcements arrived. Then Taman said, Jiwan, open firing ports. Sir, they're bottlenecked at the barrier. Open the ports. Full auto. Understanding dawned on Jiwan's face. A fierce expression that Velthara had no reference for in Luminari culture. Now that's just mean. I love it. Ports opened in the barrier at ground level. The humans fired through them, point blank, into the massed Vrix. The aliens could not retreat fast enough, packed too tightly against the barrier. They died in hundreds, unable to escape the withering fire. It was not combat. It was slaughter. Velthara felt sick. This violates. They came to kill us, Nari said quietly. She had appeared beside Velthara, checking the bunker's medical supplies. Every single one would eat us alive if they could. We're just better at killing than they are. But the unnecessary suffering, there's nothing unnecessary about it. Nari interrupted. Her gentle voice had hardened. Every Vrix that dies here is one that won't kill humans somewhere else, one that won't destroy a colony, won't murder families. She looked directly at Velthara. We don't fight fair. We fight to win. There's a difference. The assault continued for 3 hours. The Vrix kept coming. Kept dying. Kept coming. They showed no fear. No hesitation. They were designed for war. Bred for it over thousands of generations. But humans, Velthara realized, had not been bred for war. They had invented it. Perfected it. Made it into an art, and a science, and a religion. All at once. Around midnight, the Vrix tried a new tactic. They stopped the frontal assault. Sensors showed them spreading out, looking for weak points. They're adapting, Jiwan observed. Good, Taman said. 3 separate digging attempts. North, west, and south-southwest. They're trying to get under the barrier. Daehyun, deploy the surprises. Daehyun grinned. it was not a pleasant expression. With pleasure. Deep underground, charges detonated. The tunnel attempts collapsed, crushing the Vrix inside. But more kept digging. The aliens were persistent. Velthara had to grant them that. Then the south-southwest tunnel breached inside the perimeter. Alarms shrieked. Velthara watched through cameras as Vrix poured out of the ground near the supply depot. 20, 30, more emerging every second. Nari, Hyuk, Minji, respond to breach point. Taemin ordered calmly. Close combat protocols. Velthara switched camera views, watching 3 humans sprint toward the breach. They did not carry the heavy weapons. Instead, shorter weapons, blades, and something the translator called grenades. What followed was something Velthara would see in nightmares. The humans did not try to establish firing positions. They went directly into the swarm of Vrix. Nari moved like water, blade flashing. Each strike precise and fatal. The male called Hyuk used his weapon like a club when it emptied, crushing chitin with brutal efficiency. Minji threw grenades with casual accuracy, each explosion perfectly placed. They fought in the midst of the enemy, surrounded, outnumbered 5-1, and they were winning. A Vrix tackled Nari from behind. Her weapon flew away. The creature raised a claw to strike. Nari caught the claw with one hand. She pulled a knife from her belt with the other. Then she drove it into the Vrix's head, twisted, and shoved the corpse away. All in less than 2 seconds. She picked up her weapon, cleared a jam, resumed firing. Blood covered her uniform. She did not seem to notice. Breach contained, she reported, breathing hard but voice steady. Velthara stared at the camera feed, at the bodies, at Nari calmly reloading while standing in the carnage. The assault broke just before dawn. The Vrix retreated, leaving thousands of corpses. The humans did not celebrate. They immediately began emergency repairs, tended minor wounds, restocked ammunition. Velthara emerged from the bunker on shaking limbs. The firebase looked like something from ancient horror stories. Blood, both red and the strange blue of Vrix, covered everything. Shell casings lay in drifts. The air smelled of chemicals and death. Nari saw Velthara and approached. She was cleaning her blade with a cloth. Movements mechanical. Up close, Velthara could see the fatigue in her eyes. But also something else. Satisfaction, maybe. You okay? Nari asked. You killed that Vrix with your hands. Had to. Rifle jammed. She said it like discussing weather. You smiled afterward. Nari paused, considering. Did I? Sorry. Sometimes the adrenaline makes you feel weird. I wasn't happy about killing it specifically. I was happy you weren't dead. Is that bad? Velthara did not know how to answer. Jiwon joined them, offering Nari water. Both women drank deeply. Jiwon looked at the eastern horizon where the Vrix had retreated. That wasn't the battle, she said quietly. That was them testing us. Seeing our strength, our tactics, our weapons. How do you know? Velthara asked. Jiwon smiled. It was not a happy expression. Because it's what we would do. Study the enemy. Learn their patterns. Then come back and exploit every weakness. But they lost thousands. They have millions, Taemin said, approaching with updated tactical data. And now they know exactly what they're facing. He looked at his team. Get some rest. 4-hour rotation. They'll be back tonight with a real army. The humans dispersed to bunks, moving like the exhausted but functional soldiers they were. Velthara stood alone in the destroyed firebase, watching the sun rise over fields of dead. For the first time in Luminary history, an observer understood what it meant when humans said they were going to war. Not going to fight. Not going to defend. Going to war. It was a concept that encompassed far more than simple violence. It was a commitment. A decision that, once made, changed everything about how humans operated. Velthara looked at the blood on the ground and finally understood why so many species feared humanity. They were very, very good at war, and they had 48 hours until reinforcements arrived. The second assault began exactly 36 hours before reinforcements were scheduled to arrive. This time, the Vrix brought 3 times the numbers. This time, they brought siege weapons. Velthara watched the tactical display with growing horror as thousands upon thousands of red markers swarmed toward Firebase Granite. The sheer mass of the enemy force made the screen almost solid red. Estimate 12,000 hostiles, G1 reported. Her voice remained professional, but Velthara could hear the edge underneath. Multiple, heavy units. They've got biological artillery. They learned from last night, Taman said. He looked tired. 4 hours of sleep in 3 days showed on his face. But his eyes remained sharp. They know our kill zones now. They'll try to overwhelm us faster than we can replenish ammunition. He activated the communications system. All units, implement protocol Thermopylae. Velthara's translator struggled with the term. It finally returned a reference to an ancient Earth battle where a small force held against overwhelming numbers. For 3 days. Until they were all dead. That protocol results in total casualties, Velthara said quietly. Usually. Taman agreed. But we're not planning to lose. We just need to make them pay so much that 12,000 isn't enough. He looked at the observer. You should evacuate. We can get you to an escape pod. I stay. Velthara interrupted. The decision surprised even the Luminari observer. I must witness this. For the record. Velthara interrupted online. Velthara interrupted. I must witness this. Taman nodded slowly. Then stay in the bunker. And if we fall, the pod auto-launches. Understood? Understood. The Vrix hit the perimeter like a tidal wave. This time, they did not charge blindly. They advanced in coordinated groups, using cover, suppressing human firing positions with their own biological weapons. The artillery units stayed back, launching explosive organic masses that detonated on impact. The humans adapted instantly. Firing patterns changed, targeting priority shifted, positions relocated between volleys. It was like watching a living organism respond to threats, but there were so many Vrix. For every one that fell, 2 more advanced. The outer barrier buckled under sustained assault. Energy field flickering. Barrier at 40%. Daehun reported. He was covered in sweat, feeding ammunition into his weapon with mechanical efficiency. Won't hold another hour. C8. Won't hold another hour. Collapse to inner perimeter, Taman ordered. Activate all defensive measures. Everything we have. The humans fell back in stages, each withdrawal covered by the others. As they retreated, more charges detonated. More traps activated. The Vrix followed, losing dozens to every step gained. The barrier failed with a sound like breaking glass. The Vrix poured through. Now the fighting was close, desperate. Velthara watched humans firing, reloading, firing again with hands that should have been too tired to function. Watched Nari sprint between positions, treating wounds with supplies that were running dangerously low. Watched G1 drop 3 Vrix with 4 bullets, then use her weapon as a club when a 4th got too close. Taman commanded from the center, voice never rising, never showing panic. He called targets, directed fire, adjusted tactics every time the Vrix tried something new. Blood ran from a wound on his shoulder that he ignored completely. Sir, you're hit, Nari called over communications. Later, Taman replied. Daehun, they're massing on your position. Fall back to secondary. Negative. Daehun's voice came back. If I fall back, they flank the command center. I'm holding. Daehun. Respectfully, sir, I'm holding. Velthara switched camera feeds to Daehun's position. The massive human had set up his heavy weapon at a choke point, where the collapsed outer perimeter created a narrow passage. Vrix funneled through it, and Daehyun's weapon carved through them with industrial efficiency. But they kept coming. Hundreds. Thousands. "Weapon critical," he reported. "Need to swap barrels." "Do it," Taemin ordered. "We'll cover." The weapon exploded. Not catastrophically, but enough. Daehyun dropped it with a curse, pulling his sidearm. The Vrix surged forward, sensing weakness. "Position overrun," someone shouted. The camera feed showed Daehyun backing toward a prepared position, firing as he went. The Vrix were everywhere, climbing over their own dead. Daehyun reached his fallback point, smiled grimly at the camera. "For the record," he said, looking directly at Velthara through the feed. "This is called a fighting retreat." He triggered something. The entire section of perimeter collapsed inward. Tons of rubble falling onto the Vrix, packed in the choke point, and onto Daehyun's position. The camera went black. "Daehyun!" Nari screamed, breaking her professional composure for the first time. "Daehyun! Respond!" Nothing. Taemin's jaw clenched. "Nari, hold position." "Jiwon, can you reach?" "Going," Jiwon said, already moving. She grabbed Hyuk and Minji, and they sprinted toward the collapsed section. Velthara watched them dig through rubble while fighting off Vrix that tried to stop them. Watched Jiwon fire one-handed while pulling debris with the other. Watched Minji take a claw strike to the leg and keep digging. They found Daehyun buried under a structural beam. Unconscious. Bleeding. But alive. His armor had saved him. Barely. "Got him," Jiwon reported. "He's breathing. Multiple fractures, possible internal injuries." They carried him back under fire, Nari meeting them halfway to begin emergency treatment. She worked with hands that shook from exhaustion and fear, injecting stimulants, sealing wounds, stabilizing fractures. Daehyun's eyes fluttered open. He tried to speak, coughed blood. "Don't talk," Nari ordered, voice thick with emotion. "You magnificent idiot. Don't you dare talk." "Did." Daehyun managed. "Did it work?" Taemin appeared beside them, checking the tactical display. The collapse had sealed the choke point completely. The Vrix assault on that vector had stalled. "It worked," Taemin confirmed. "You bought us 6 hours. Minimum. Maybe more." Daehyun smiled, blood on his teeth. "Good enough." They moved him to the medical bay, such as it was. Nari stayed with him, monitoring vitals, while simultaneously treating a dozen other wounded. The firebase had become a hospital, every spare space filled with injured humans. The assault continued for 18 straight hours. Velthara lost track of time. Everything blurred into an endless cycle of violence. The humans fought with a desperation that transcended rational thought. They had gone beyond tactics, beyond training. Now they fought on pure will. Ammunition ran critically low. Jiwon taught the less injured soldiers to ration bullets, making every single shot count. 3 rounds per target maximum. Close range only when possible. Water supplies hit emergency levels. The humans shared canteens, each taking only enough to keep functioning. Sleep became impossible. Every hand was needed. The humans rotated positions, stealing moments of rest measured in minutes, then back to fighting. Velthara found a weapon in hand without remembering picking it up. Nari had pressed it there during a desperate moment, showing the Luminari observer how to fire, how to reload. "You're not just observing anymore," Nari had said. "You're surviving. Help us." So Velthara fought. Poorly, shakily, but fought nonetheless. Each trigger pull felt like a violation of everything the Luminari stood for. Each dead Vrix, a mark against peaceful philosophy. But watching Nari work on Daehyun, watching Taemin command on a wounded shoulder, watching Jiwon fire with hands blistered from heat and recoil, Velthara understood something fundamental. The humans were not fighting for philosophy or politics or territory. They were fighting for each other, for the person to their left and right. That bond made them stronger than any Vrix swarm. On hour 26 of the assault, Velthara found Nari sitting alone for 30 seconds, weapon across her lap, face blank with exhaustion. Silent tears ran down her cheeks. She did not make a sound, did not stop watching her assigned field of fire, just cried quietly while maintaining her duty. "You are afraid," Velthara observed, sitting beside her. "Terrified," Nari confirmed. "Been terrified for 20 hours. She wiped her face roughly. "But that's not important. What's important is holding this position until help arrives. That's the mission. That's what matters. How do you continue while feeling such fear?" Nari looked at the Luminari observer with eyes that had seen too much. "Because if I stop, people I love die. So I don't stop. None of us do. That's what being human means. We feel the fear and fight anyway." The assault finally broke at hour 32. The Vrix retreated, having lost over 8,000 warriors. They left the firebase surrounded, but withdrew out of firing range. The humans immediately began preparations for the next wave. Because everyone knew it was coming. Reinforcements were 14 hours away. The Vrix would return, long before that. And everyone in Firebase Granite knew the next assault might be the last. The Vrix tried something new. Something that made even the exhausted humans pause in their preparations. Over the communications channels came voices. Coalition voices. Screaming. "They have prisoners," Jiwan said, her face going pale. "From the colony on Viridian 7's southern continent. The one that went dark 2 weeks ago." The screams continued, broadcast on all frequencies. Pleas for help. Descriptions of torture. The sounds of beings dying slowly. "It is a trap," Velthara said quietly. "They want you to attempt rescue, to leave your fortified position." "Obviously," Taman agreed. He was listening to the transmissions, his expression unreadable. "Jiwan, can you triangulate those signals?" "Sir, we can't." "Can you triangulate the signals?" Jiwan worked her console, hands flying over controls. "Yes. 3 locations. All within 1 kilometer. They're broadcasting from the captured colony communication equipment. How many Vrix at each location? Unknown. Probably hundreds. Sir, this is suicide. We barely survived the last assault. We can't divide our forces." Taman stood silent for a long moment. The screams continued over the speakers. Somewhere out there, Coalition citizens were being tortured to lure humans into a trap. "We're going," Taman said finally. "Sir, we're going," he repeated, voice hard. "Because if we don't, we might as well be dead anyway. What's the point of surviving if we abandon people who need us?" He looked at his team. "I need volunteers. This is a one-way trip, unless we're very lucky and very good." Every single human raised their hand. Even Daehyun, barely able to stand, lifted his from the medical bed. "Daehyun, you're staying," Taman said firmly. "Someone needs to hold the base. Hyuk, Minji, Sora, your base defense. Everyone else, we move in 5 minutes." Velthara stood. "I am coming. Observer, this is not..." "I am no longer just observing," Velthara interrupted. "You have taught me to fight. Now, I will fight beside you." Taman studied the Luminari for a moment, then nodded. "Grab a weapon. Stay close to Nari." They moved out into the darkness. 12 humans and 1 Luminari, leaving the safety of Firebase Granite to walk into an obvious trap. The logical part of Velthara's mind screamed that this was madness. The part that had spent 3 days with humans understood it completely. The first location was in a collapsed building. The Vrix had set up inside, using prisoners as bait. Taman split the team, approaching from 2 angles. "On my mark," he whispered over communications. 3, 2, 1. Mark. They hit the building from both sides simultaneously. Velthara followed Nari through a broken wall. Weapon raised. The interior was chaos. Vrix turned to face them, surprised by the assault. Prisoners huddled in cages, crying out. The fighting was brutal and close. No room for heavy weapons, just rifles, knives, and desperate violence. Velthara fired at a Vrix charging Nari's blind side. The alien crumpling. Nari spun, nodded thanks, kept moving. They cleared the building in 3 minutes. 6 Coalition citizens rescued, terrified but alive. 8 Vrix dead. 2 humans wounded, neither critically. Move to location 2, Taman ordered. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they respond in force. Location 2 was worse. The Vrix had expected them, prepared better. The humans walked into a crossfire that should have killed them all. Jiwan went down first, taking a claw strike to the side. She kept firing from the ground, dropping 3 Vrix before Minji dragged her to cover. The team pushed forward through overwhelming fire, gaining meters at the cost of blood. Velthara felt something hot tear across one arm. Pain, bright and shocking. The Luminari observer stumbled, weapon falling. A Vrix turned toward the easy prey, mandibles clicking. Nari appeared from nowhere, blade flashing. The Vrix died before completing its turn. Nari grabbed Velthara, pulled the observer behind cover. Stay down, Nari ordered, wrapping the wound quickly. You're okay, just a graze. Stay here. She was gone again. Moving through the battle like something from a nightmare. Or a hero story. Velthara could not decide which. Taman's voice cut through the chaos. Prisoners located. Northeast corner. Jiwan, Sora, get them out. Everyone else, covering fire. Now, the humans poured fire into the Vrix positions, creating enough chaos for the rescue team to reach the prisoners. 14 more Coalition citizens. These, in worse shape than the first group. Moving out, Sora called. Go, go, go. They retreated under fire, carrying prisoners and wounded. The Vrix followed, scenting victory. The humans fell back in stages, each group covering the next. Then Taman stopped running. He turned, facing the pursuit. Keep moving, he ordered. I'm buying time. Sir, no. That's an order, Taman shouted. Get them to safety. I'll be right behind you. It was a lie. Everyone knew it was a lie. Taman took position at a corridor junction, weapon raised. The Vrix came screaming around the corner. He fired with mechanical precision, dropping the first, second, third. Reloaded. Fired again. The Vrix could not get past him, the corridor too narrow for their numbers to matter. Over communications, his voice remained calm. Approaching the base? Good. Keep moving. Don't wait for me. Sir, we can. I said don't wait. That's final. He fired again. Again. Tell Daehyun he was right. Fighting retreats do work. Tell Nari. Tell her it was an honor. Velthara watched through the camera Taman carried. Watched him fight alone against dozens. His ammunition counter dropped to 0. He drew his sidearm. That ran empty. He pulled his knife. Charges set, he reported, voice still impossibly steady. 30 seconds. You clear? We're clear, G1 confirmed, voice breaking. Sir, good enough. Taman out. The feed showed him smile. Actually smile. Then, the corridor exploded. The blast wave knocked the rescue team off their feet. When they stood, the corridor behind them had collapsed completely. Sealed. No Vrix could follow. No one could survive that collapse. Nari screamed, a sound of pure anguish. She started back toward the rubble. Jiwan, wounded and bleeding, grabbed her. He gave us an order, Jiwan said, tears streaming down her face. We get these people to safety. That's the mission. That's what he died for. They stumbled back to Firebase Granite, carrying wounded and rescued prisoners. The base defenders helped them over the walls. Medical teams began treating injuries immediately. 20 Coalition citizens saved. 3 humans wounded seriously. G1 needed surgery. Minji had a compound fracture. Sora had burns from a Vrix acid weapon, and Taemin was dead. Daehyun, barely able to stand, demanded the full report. When Ji-won told him what happened, he closed his eyes. One tear ran down his face. Then, he straightened. "He bought us time," Daehyun said quietly, made their response slow. "That's good tactics. That's what a good commander does." His voice cracked slightly. "That's what Taemin would want us to remember." The mission succeeded. Nari sat alone, cleaning Taemin's knife. He had given it to her months ago, for luck. She clutched it now, knuckles white. Velthara approached slowly. "I am sorry." "He knew," Nari whispered. "He knew it was a trap. Knew we'd probably die. Went anyway because people needed help. That's what humans do. That's what he did. And now, he's gone. Why do humans do this? Risk everything for strangers?" Nari looked at the Luminari observer with eyes full of grief and something fierce. "Because if we don't, what are we? Just animals fighting to survive? We're more than that. Taemin proved we're more than that. He died so 20 people could live. That math works. That's the math we accept." The rescued prisoners were in medical bay, being treated. They were from a dozen different species, all alive because 12 humans and 1 Luminari had walked into a trap, because 1 human had given everything to get them out. The Vrix attacked again 4 hours later. This time, every single rescued prisoner who could hold a weapon stood on the walls with the humans. A Keltharian trader with 2 wounded arms fired with his feet. A Porkin scholar used his natural acid spit as a weapon. Even a Luminari merchant, trembling with fear, held a rifle and aimed at the approaching Vrix. They fought together. Different species, different philosophies, united by the example of humans who had saved them. The assault was desperate. The Vrix threw everything at Firebase Granite, but the defenders held. Held for Taemin. Held for each other. Held because giving up was not something humans did, and their courage had infected everyone else. Dawn broke over Viridian 7. The Vrix retreated again, their numbers finally depleted enough to matter, and on the horizon, coalition ships appeared. Reinforcements, arriving exactly on schedule. Firebase Granite had held. Barely. At terrible cost. But it had held. Velthara stood on the walls, watching the ships descend, and finally understood what terror truly meant. It was not the Vrix with their numbers and their biological weapons. It was humans. Who would die rather than abandon strangers? Who would walk into certain death because it was the right thing to do? Who would fight beyond reason, beyond survival instinct, beyond any logical calculation? The galaxy should be terrified of humans. Not because they were monsters, but because they were heroes. And nothing was more dangerous than someone who refused to quit. The Coalition medical ship was clean, bright, and sterile. Everything Firebase Granite had not been. Velthara walked its corridors in a daze, the contrast almost painful. 3 weeks had passed since the siege ended. 3 weeks since reinforcements arrived, to find Firebase Granite still standing, defended by 28 humans, 1 Luminari observer, and 20 rescued prisoners. 3 weeks since they counted the cost. 34 humans had held that firebase for 72 hours against waves of Vrix. 12 were dead. Another 17 were wounded badly enough to require serious medical intervention. Every single survivor had injuries of some kind, but they had held. Velthara's arm was healing well, the graze leaving only a scar. A mark the Luminari observer found both shameful and oddly precious. Evidence that the peaceful observer had been there, had fought, had survived. The human ward was on deck 3. Velthara had visited every day since the evacuation. Today felt different. Today, Velthara had questions that needed answers. Taemin's name was on the memorial wall near the ward entrance. Corporal Taemin Kim died in service. Saved 20 coalition citizens. The plaque made it sound simple, clean. It had been neither. Inside the ward, Daehyun sat in a chair beside a window, leg still in a cast. He was reading something on a datapad, frowning at it. He looked up when Velthara entered. "Observer," he greeted. His voice was still rough from smoke inhalation. "Come to check on the broken humans?" "Come to check on friends," Velthara corrected. Daehyun's expression softened. "Friends. Yeah. I like that." He gestured to another chair. "Sit. Save me from this medical paperwork. They want me to describe in detail every injury I sustained. Like I kept track." Velthara sat. They stayed silent for a moment, watching ships pass outside the window. "How are the others?" Velthara asked. "Ji-won's out of surgery. They saved the arm, but she's looking at 6 months of recovery. Probably a medical discharge. She's pissed about it." Daehyun smiled slightly. "Threatened to fight the review board. Had to be sedated. And Nari?" Daehyun's smile faded. "Physically? Minor injuries? Mentally?" He shook his head. "Taemin's death hit her hard. Hits all of us. But especially her. They were close. She blames herself. Somehow. Won't talk about it. Where is she now?" "Medical bay. Helping with the rescued prisoners. She won't stop working. Won't rest. I think she's afraid if she stops, she'll have to think about it." He looked at Velthara. "You could talk to her. She listens to you." Velthara found Nari in the medical bay, exactly as Daehyun predicted. She was checking on a Keltharian child. One of the rescued prisoners. The child laughed at something Nari said, reaching up to touch her face. Nari smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. When the child's parent arrived, Nari excused herself. She saw Velthara and approached, looking tired. "Observer, how's the arm?" "Healing well. How are you?" "Fine," Nari said automatically. Then, seeing Velthara's expression, she sighed. "Not fine, but functional. That's enough. You are allowed to grieve." "I am grieving. I'm just also working. People still need help. The war doesn't stop because we're sad." She sat down heavily on a bench. "Sorry. That sounded harsh." Velthara sat beside her. "Taemin would be proud of what you accomplished. All of you." The firebase held. 20 people lived because of your actions. 20 people lived because Taemin died," Nari corrected bitterly. "That's not a fair trade." End quote. He thought it was. He chose it. "I know," Nari wiped her eyes roughly. "I know he did. That's what makes it worse. He knew it was suicide, and went anyway, because that's what humans do. We're idiots like that. You are heroes like that." Nari laughed, but it was a sad sound. "Heroes. Right. I don't feel like a hero. I feel like someone who watched a good man die and couldn't stop it." They sat in silence for a while. Then Nari spoke again, quieter. "The Keltharian kid. The one I was just treating. She asked me why humans saved them. Why we risked our lives for strangers." Nari's voice cracked slightly. "I didn't know how to explain it." "How do you explain that to a child? That we just do it because someone has to?" "You explain it by being yourself," Velthara said. "By showing her that some beings in the galaxy will choose to help instead of hiding. You are the explanation, Nari. You and Taemin, and all the humans." Nari cried then, quietly, letting the grief finally surface. Velthara stayed beside her, offering silent support the way Nari had done for others so many times. Later, Velthara visited Ji-won. She was awake, her arm immobilized in advanced healing apparatus. She looked furious about it. "They're trying to discharge me," she said immediately. "Medical retirement. Like I'm some kind of invalid." "Your arm requires significant reconstruction," Velthara observed. "So? I can shoot left-handed. I can still fight." She glared at the ceiling. Taemin died holding that line. Daehyun buried himself in rubble. Nari fought hand to hand. And they want to send me home because my arm got cut? That's insulting. Perhaps it is an opportunity. You survived. You can have a life beyond war. minus clom, minus clom, minus clom, minus clom, minus clom, minus clom, abialam, minus clom, minus clom, minus clom, minus clom, abialam, abialamus. Jiwan's anger faded slightly. Maybe. Doesn't feel right, though. Like I'm abandoning everyone. She looked at Velthara. What about you? Going back to your observer duties? I am scheduled to present my findings to the Luminary Council in 2 weeks. What will you tell them? Velthara considered carefully. The truth. That I witnessed humanity at war. That it was the most terrible and most inspiring thing I have ever seen. That the galaxy fundamentally misunderstands what humans are. And what are we? Survivors who became protectors. Warriors who never forgot how to be kind. The most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because you are cruel, but because you care too much to give up. Velthara paused. I will tell them that any species would be fortunate to have humans as allies, and very unfortunate to have them as enemies. Jiwan smiled. A real one this time. That's a hell of a report. They going to believe you? They will have to. I have 72 hours of footage. Of humans fighting impossible odds. Of Taman walking into certain death to save strangers. Of Nari treating wounds while crying from exhaustion. Of you fighting with a torn side. Of Daehyun choosing to bury himself rather than retreat. Make sure they see all of it, Jiwan said seriously. The ugly parts too. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. We die. We're just humans. Just humans. Velthara repeated. I think that phrase will haunt me forever. Because there is nothing just about humanity. 2 weeks later, Velthara stood before the Luminary Council in the Great Chamber of Harmony. The council members, all dressed in traditional white robes, sat in their elevated positions, looking down at the observer. Present your findings. The first speaker commanded. Velthara activated the display, showing Firebase granite before the siege, then during, then after. The council watched in silence as humans fought and died. Watched Taman's last stand. Watched the rescued prisoners standing beside their rescuers in the final battle. Watched it all unfold in brutal honesty. When it finished, the chamber remained silent for a long moment. This is disturbing, the second speaker said finally. Such violence. Such disregard for life. With respect, Council, you misunderstand, Velthara said. They did not disregard life. They cherished it so much they were willing to die for strangers. That is not disregard. That is the opposite. They are dangerous. The third speaker argued. Too violent. Too willing to fight. We should recommend restrictions on human military operations within coalition space. If you do that, Velthara said quietly, you will make the greatest mistake in Luminary history. The council stirred. Such direct contradiction was unusual. Explain, the first speaker commanded. Humans are not dangerous to us, Velthara said. They are dangerous for us. The Vrix learned this. 12,000 warriors attacked 34 humans. The humans won. Not through superior technology or numbers, but through sheer will. Velthara activated another display, showing casualty reports. The Vrix lost 90% of their assault force. They retreated from an entire sector, because 34 humans refused to quit. One species cannot change warfare. The second speaker protested. They already have. Velthara countered. Every species that was at Firebase Granite fought harder, because humans fought beside them. I saw a Luminary merchant fire a weapon for the first time in his life. Why? Because he saw humans dying to save him and could not do less. Velthara looked at each council member in turn. Humans make everyone around them braver, stronger, more determined. That is their true danger. Not their violence, but their courage. It is contagious. The first speaker leaned forward. You recommend we continue current human military partnerships? I recommend we expand them, Velthara said. Every coalition force should have human advisors, Not for their weapons, but for their spirit. Because when humans refuse to quit, everyone else finds they cannot quit either. This is unprecedented. So are humans. That is the point. The council debated for 3 hours. Finally, they reached a decision. Human military operations would not be restricted. Instead, a new program would be created, embedding human units with other coalition forces. Velthara left the chamber satisfied. The decision was not perfect, but it was right. That night, Velthara received a message on a private channel. From Nari. Hey Observer, heard your report went well, wanted to say thanks for telling our story right. Also, wanted to send you something. Attached was an image. The surviving humans from Firebase Granite gathered around a table in the medical ship's mess hall. They were eating together, talking, even laughing. Daehyun's leg was still in a cast. Jiwon's arm was still immobilized. They all looked tired, worn, marked by their ordeal. But they were together. They had survived. And they were already talking about their next assignment. Below the image, Nari had written, "Thanks for fighting with us. You're honorary human now. That's for life." Velthara looked at the image for a long time, at beings who had taught a peaceful observer how to hold a weapon, who had shown that courage was not the absence of fear, but action despite it, who had demonstrated what it meant to refuse surrender. The galaxy called them humans. Velthara had a different word now, family. Somewhere on that medical ship, Taemin's name was on a memorial wall. Beside it were 33 others who had died in the siege. Humans who had stood when logic said to run, who had fought when mathematics said to surrender. The Vrix would remember Firebase Granite. They would tell stories about the humans who turned a small outpost into an unbreakable fortress, about how their warriors broke against human determination. Other species would hear those stories. Some would be afraid. Some would be inspired. All would understand one fundamental truth. When humans said they would hold a position, they meant it, unto death and beyond. And the galaxy would be very, very careful about making humans their enemies. Because the day Velthara battled alongside humans, the observer learned what terror truly was. It was not monsters with claws and venom. It was heroes with rifles and determination who absolutely refused to let evil win. And nothing in the universe was more dangerous than that.